The message came at midnight, Earth time. Admiral Taiho Park stood in his office aboard the orbital station above Seoul, reading the words on his screen for the third time. The Galactic Council had summoned humanity to answer for crimes against galactic law. They had 7 days to send a delegation to Ethon Prime, or face immediate consequences. Taiho was a tall man with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. He had served humanity for 40 years, first as a soldier, then as a commander. And now, as the highest military officer in the fleet. He had fought pirates in the outer colonies. He had defended Earth from raiders. But he had never seen anything like this. He picked up his communicator and called, "Ambassador Yuna Kong." Yuna arrived within the hour. She was younger than Taiho, in her late 40s, with sharp features and a calm voice that could quiet a room full of angry diplomats. She had spent 20 years building relationships with alien species, learning their languages, understanding their customs. She believed in peace. She believed in cooperation. But when she read the summons, her expression turned cold. "They are accusing us of illegal colonization," she said. "The Vera sector. Our 3 newest colonies." "Those worlds were unclaimed," Taiho replied. "We checked the records ourselves before we sent the colony ships." "I know," Yuna set down her tablet. "Something is wrong here. This feels like a trap." They had no choice but to go. Refusing the summons would be seen as an admission of guilt. It would give the Council an excuse to act against humanity. So they prepared the delegation. Captain Minho Lee would serve as military attaché. He was young and loyal, a soldier who had never lost faith in his commanders. Dr. Hannah Cho would join as scientific advisor. She was perhaps the smartest person Taiho had ever met, with a mind that could solve problems others could not even see. Together with a staff of aides and officers, they boarded the diplomatic vessel Hanzyung and set course for Ethon Prime. The journey took 4 days. Taiho spent most of that time reviewing files about the Galactic Council. Humanity had joined only 40 years ago, after first contact with the Keth Collective. In that time, they had learned that the galaxy was old. Ancient species had been traveling between stars for millions of years. They had built empires, fought wars, and created laws that governed all who wished to join them. Humans were newcomers. Children, in the eyes of the elder races. Some species welcomed them. Others tolerated them. And some, Taiho knew, feared them. Humanity grew fast. They adapted quickly. In just 4 decades, they had spread to dozens of worlds, built a powerful fleet, and developed technology that surprised even the oldest civilizations. This made certain species nervous. A race that could grow so fast might one day challenge the established order. Ethon Prime appeared on the view screen as they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. It was a massive station, larger than any city on Earth, floating in the empty space between star systems. This was neutral ground, where all species could meet as equals, or so they claimed. The Hanseong docked at the human port. Taiho led his delegation through long corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others floated, crawled, or slithered. The air was thick with strange smells and stranger sounds. Translators worked overtime to convert the countless languages into something the humans could understand. They reached the Grand Assembly Hall. It was enormous. A circular chamber with thousands of seats rising up toward a domed ceiling that showed the stars outside. Representatives from hundreds of species filled those seats, watching as the humans entered. Taiho felt their eyes on him. Some looked curious. Others looked hostile. He kept his back straight and his face calm as he led his people to the small section reserved for humanity. Hi, Speaker Vel stood at the center of the hall. He was a tall creature with pale blue skin and 4 arms, dressed in robes that marked his position as leader of the council. His voice echoed through the chamber, deep and commanding. "The delegation from Earth has arrived," Vel announced. "We will now hear the charges." Taiho listened as Vel spoke. The charges were clear. Humanity had colonized 3 worlds in the Vera sector. These worlds, according to Vel, were protected territory under galactic law. By settling them, Humans had violated the sacred rules that governed all civilized species. When Vel finished, he looked down at the human delegation. How does Earth respond? Una stood. Her voice was calm but strong. High Speaker, we reject these charges. Before our colony ships departed, we consulted the official records. The Varus sector was listed as unclaimed space. We followed every rule. We broke no laws. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Vel raised one of his hands for silence. The records you saw were outdated, he said. The Varus sector was designated as protected territory before your ships arrived. Your colonies are illegal. You will evacuate them immediately, or face sanctions. Una did not back down. May we see these updated records? May we know when this designation was made? Vel's eyes narrowed. The Council does not answer to humanity. You will accept our judgment, or suffer the consequences. Taiho watched the exchange carefully. He saw how Vel avoided the question. He saw how certain delegates in the audience smiled, as if they already knew how this would end. His suspicion grew stronger. This was not justice. This was something else entirely. He leaned toward Minho. Tell Hannah to search the Council archives. Find everything she can about the Varus designation. When it was filed, who filed it, every detail. Minho nodded and quietly sent the message to the Hanzuni in orbit. On the assembly floor, Una continued to argue their case. She pointed out humanity's contributions to the Council. She reminded them of the trade agreements, the scientific exchanges, the peacekeeping missions where human soldiers had fought alongside alien allies. She spoke of friendship and cooperation, but Taiho could see it was not working. The decision had already been made. The question was why? What did the Council really want? What were they truly afraid of? He would find out soon enough. And when he did, everything would change. Dr. Hannah Cho had not slept in 30 hours. She sat in the research bay of the Hanzayong, surrounded by floating screens filled with data. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as she dug deeper into the Council's archives. The security systems were good, but Hannah was better. She had started her search the moment Captain Minho's message arrived. Something about the charges against humanity did not make sense. If the Varus sector had truly been protected territory, someone would have warned them. There would have been alerts, notifications, something. Instead, there had been nothing but silence until the summons came. Hannah found the file she was looking for. It was buried deep in the administrative records, hidden behind layers of encryption that most species would never think to check. She cracked it open and began to read. What she found made her blood run cold. The protected territory designation for the Varus sector had been filed by Councillor Bryn of the Shale Empire. That was not surprising. The Shale were known for their territorial claims. What shocked her was the date. The designation had been filed 3 days after the first. Human colony ship landed on Varus 3, not before or after. She checked the timestamps twice, then 3 times. There was no mistake. The Council had changed the law after humanity had already settled those worlds. They had created a crime out of nothing. Hannah gathered every piece of evidence she could find. Communication logs between Bryn and other Council members, financial records showing payments to officials who helped hide the true timeline, meeting notes where they discussed how to handle the human problem. It was all there. It's written in their own words. She sent everything to Captain Minho with a single message. Show this to the Admiral now. Down on the assembly floor, the debate continued. Una had been arguing for hours, but she could feel the walls closing in. Every point she made was dismissed. Every piece of evidence she offered was ignored. High Speaker Vel had made up his mind before the humans even arrived. Councillor Bryn sat in the shale section, watching with a thin smile on his face. He was an old creature with scales the color of rust and eyes that held no warmth. He had been on the Council for 200 years. He had seen species rise and fall, and he had decided long ago that humanity was a threat that needed to be stopped. Minho received Hannah's transmission. He read it quickly, his eyes widening with each line. Then he moved through the crowd to Admiral Taiho's side and handed him a small tablet. Taiho read the evidence. His expression did not change, but inside, A cold anger began to build. He had suspected treachery. Now he had proof. He stood and raised his hand. "Hi, Speaker. I request permission to present new evidence." Bell looked annoyed. "The time for evidence has passed. We are preparing to vote on sanctions. This evidence is critical," Taiho insisted. "It concerns the legitimacy of the charges against us. The Council has a duty to hear it." Murmurs spread through the assembly. Some delegates looked curious. Others looked nervous. Vel hesitated. To refuse would make him look afraid of what Taiho might reveal. "Very well," Vel said finally. "Present your evidence. But be quick." Taiho connected his tablet to the assembly's display systems. Suddenly, documents appeared on every screen in the hall. Timestamps, communications, financial records. The entire conspiracy laid bare for all to see. The protected territory designation for the Varus sector was filed 3 days after our colony ships landed, Taiho announced. Not before, after. Councillor Bryn and his allies changed the law to create a crime where none existed. "This entire hearing is a fraud," the assembly erupted. Delegates shouted at each other. Some demanded answers. Others tried to defend Bryn. The hall became chaos. Bryn rose from his seat, his scales flushing dark with rage. "These documents are forgeries. Human lies designed to escape justice." "They are from your own archives," Taiho replied calmly. "Encrypted with Council security codes. Unless you are saying the Council itself is lying?" Bryn turned to Vel. "Hi, Speaker. This is an attack on the integrity of the Council." "You cannot allow this." Vel raised his hands for silence. The hall slowly quieted. When he spoke, his voice was cold. "The documents presented by the human delegation will be examined by our security teams. However, regardless of their authenticity, they do not change the current status of galactic law. The Varus sector is protected territory. Human presence there is illegal. The vote on sanctions will proceed." Una stepped forward. "You cannot be serious. We have just shown you proof of conspiracy. Proof that Councillor Bryn manufactured these charges. How can you ignore this?" "The Council makes the law," Vel replied. "We do not answer to humanity." Taiho understood then. The evidence did not matter. Truth did not matter. The Council had already decided what they wanted to do. They would punish humanity because they were afraid of what humanity might become. They would cripple Earth's colonies, restrict their fleet, and keep them weak forever. He looked around the assembly. He saw the faces of the delegates. Some looked ashamed. Others looked satisfied. A few, like Delegate Orm of the Keth, watched with troubled eyes. But none of them spoke up. None of them challenged Vel. "You have heard the charges," Vel continued. "You have heard the human defense. Now we vote. All in favor of sanctions against Earth?" Hands rose across the chamber. "More than half. More than enough." "The motion passes," Vel declared. "Humanity will evacuate the Varus colonies within 60 days. All human military vessels will be restricted to Earth's home system. Trade agreements will be suspended until compliance is confirmed." Taiho stood very still. Beside him, Yuna's hands were clenched into fists. Minho looked like he wanted to fight someone, but there was nothing they could do. Not now. The Council had made its decision, but they did not realize what they had just started. They thought they had one. They thought humanity would obey like every other species before them. They were wrong. Taiho caught Yuna's eye. A silent message passed between them. She gave a small nod. It was time to show the galaxy who humanity really was. The assembly hall fell silent after the vote. High Speaker Vel looked down at the human delegation with cold satisfaction. He had done what needed to be done. Humanity had been put in its place. The natural order of the galaxy had been preserved. Admiral Taiho Park did not move. He stood in the center of the human section, surrounded by his people, his face as calm as stone. But inside his mind, a storm was raging. 40 years of service. 40 years of building bridges, following rules, trying to earn respect from species that saw humans as nothing more than children playing at. Being adults And this was how they were repaid. With lies, with conspiracy, with punishment for crimes that never existed. He looked at Ambassador Yuna. She met his eyes and gave a single nod. No words were needed. They both knew what had to be done. Taiho stepped forward. His boots echoed in the silent hall. Every eye turned to him. Thousands of alien delegates watched, waiting to see how the humans would accept their defeat. High Speaker Vel, Taiho said. His voice was steady. Not loud, but it carried to every corner of the chamber. Delegates of the Galactic Council. I have served my people for 40 years. In that time, I have always believed in cooperation. I believed that different species could work together, that we could learn from each other, that trust and respect could be earned through actions. He paused. The silence was absolute. Today, you have shown me that I was wrong. Vel's expression flickered. Something in Taiho's tone made him uneasy. Humanity came to the stars seeking friendship, Taiho continued. We offered our hands in partnership. We shared our knowledge. We fought beside you in battles against common enemies. We followed your laws even when they seemed unfair. We did everything right. His voice grew harder. And what did we receive in return? Suspicion, fear, conspiracy. You manufactured crimes to punish us. You changed your own laws to trap us. You voted to cripple our people based on lies that you refused to acknowledge. Counselor Bryn stood up. You dare to lecture us? You are children. Your species has existed for the blink of an eye. You do not understand how the galaxy works. Die. Turn to face him. I understand perfectly, Counselor. You are afraid. All of you. You see how fast we grow, how quickly we adapt, and it terrifies you. So you decided to stop us before we became too strong? This hearing was never about justice. It was about fear. Bryn's scales flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Ambassador Yuna stepped forward. We came here in good faith, she said. Her voice was calm, but carried a weight that silenced the murmurs in the crowd. We presented evidence of fraud. We asked for fairness. You gave us nothing but contempt. So now I will tell you what comes next. She looked around the assembly, meeting the eyes of delegates from dozens of species. The human delegation formally withdraws from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. We will not evacuate our colonies. We will not restrict our fleet. We do not recognize the authority of a body that manufactures crimes and ignores truth. The assembly erupted in shock. Delegates shouted. Some jumped to their feet. This had never happened before. No species had ever walked away from the council. High Speaker Vel slammed his hand on the podium. You cannot do this. Withdrawal means you lose all protection under galactic law. You will be alone against the entire galaxy. Yuna smiled. It was not a warm smile. We have always been alone, High Speaker. We just did not realize it until now. She turned to face the human delegation. Every officer, every aide, every diplomat was watching her. She raised her chin. Stand up. They rose as one. Captain Minho Lee, Dr. Hannah Cho, who had come down from the ship to witness this moment. 24 humans, standing together in the center of the greatest assembly in the galaxy, turn around. They turned their backs on the High Speaker, on the Council, on everything they had once believed in. Walk. Admiral Taiho led the way. His boots struck the floor in a steady rhythm. Behind him, his people followed in perfect formation. They walked toward the great doors at the far end of the hall, their steps echoing like thunder in the stunned silence. Delegate Orm of the Keth watched them go. There was something in his eyes that had not been there before. Respect, admiration, perhaps even hope. Counselor Bryn screamed at them. You are making a terrible mistake. You will regret this. The council will crush you. No one stopped. No one looked back. The great doors loomed ahead. Ancient metal carved with symbols of unity and peace. Symbols that meant nothing now. Admiral Taiho reached the doors first. He pushed them open with both hands. Light flooded in from the corridor beyond. He stepped through without hesitation. One by one. The humans followed. Yuna, Minho, Hannah, every single member of the delegation. They walked out of the Galactic Council and did not look back. The doors swung shut behind them with a boom that shook the walls. Inside the assembly, chaos reigned. Delegates argued. Some demanded pursuit. Others called for calm. High Speaker Vel stood frozen at his podium, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. He turned to Warden Tal, head of Galactic Security. Stop them. Do not let them reach their ship. Tal bowed and hurried out of the hall, gathering his forces as he went. He would intercept the humans in the docking corridor. He would detain them, teach them the price of defiance. He did not know that in orbit above Ethon Prime, Commander Sun Woo-Beak had been watching everything. He did not know that 6 human warships were already moving into position. He did not know that humanity had prepared for this day. The Council thought the humans were making a mistake. They thought defiance was weakness. They thought they could crush this young species and return to the way things had always been. They had never been more wrong. The corridor outside the assembly hall stretched before them like a silver river. Admiral Taiho led his delegation forward at a steady pace. Not too fast, not too slow. They walked like people who had nothing to fear. Behind him, Ambassador Yuna kept her expression calm. Inside, her heart was pounding. She had just done something no diplomat in history had ever done. Why, she had walked away from the most powerful organization in the galaxy. There was no going back now. Captain Minho walked beside Dr. Hannah, his hand resting on the sidearm at his hip. He did not expect trouble, but he was ready for it. That was what soldiers did. They prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. They were halfway to the docking port when Warden Tal appeared. He stood at the end of the corridor with 50 security officers behind him. They wore the blue armor of the Galactic Guard, and they carried weapons that could cut through steel. Tal himself was a massive creature, with thick gray skin and arms like tree trunks. He had served the Council for 3 centuries. He had never failed to enforce its will. "Stop," he commanded. His voice boomed through the corridor. "By order of the High Speaker, you are under detention. Surrender your weapons and come with us." Taiho did not stop. He kept walking, his delegation following behind him. Admiral Park Tao growled, "I will not ask again. Stop now, or we will use force." Taiho finally halted 10 meters from the line of guards. He looked at Tao with eyes that held no fear. "Warden, I am going to give you some advice. Step aside." Tao laughed. It was a harsh, ugly sound. "You are in no position to give orders, human. You are on our station, surrounded by our forces. Your little ship cannot save you. I was not talking about my ship." Before Tal could respond, every communicator in the corridor crackled to life. A new voice filled the air, calm and clear. "This is Commander Sun Woo-Beak of the Earth battlecruiser Dukta Warden Tal. You have 60 seconds to stand down and allow the human delegation to pass. Failure to comply will be considered an act of war." Tal's eyes widened. He looked at a screen on his wrist, and his face went pale. 6 human warships had appeared around. Ethon Prime. They had dropped out of faster-than-light travel without warning, surrounding the station in a perfect formation. Their weapons were online. Their shields were raised. They were ready to fight. The Docto was the largest ship in the formation. It was a battlecruiser, 3 kilometers long, bristling with weapons that the Council had never seen before. Beside it floated 5 heavy cruisers, each one capable of destroying a fleet on its own. This was Protocol Gyron, a contingency plan that humanity had developed in secret, hoping they would never need to use it. Hidden shipyards, classified weapons programs. An entire shadow fleet built without the Council's knowledge, and now that fleet was here? Tal stared at the readings on his display. The human ships outgunned his station's defenses 10-1. If they opened fire, Ethon Prime would be destroyed in minutes. Everyone on board, including thousands of innocent delegates, would die. "You would not dare," he whispered. Taiho stepped closer. 40 years ago, we joined your council. We followed your rules. We trusted you, and you betrayed us. Do you really want to find out what we are willing to do?" The seconds ticked away. Tal looked at his guards. They were station security, trained to handle criminals and protesters. They were not soldiers. They were not prepared to fight a war. 30 seconds, Sunwall's voice announced from every speaker. Tal made his decision. He stepped aside and ordered his men to lower their weapons. Go, he said bitterly. But this is not over. No, Taiho agreed. It is just beginning. The human delegation walked past the guards without another word. They reached the docking port where the Han Seong waited. The ship's doors opened, and they boarded quickly and efficiently. On the bridge, Captain Minho took the helm. Dr. Hannah moved to the science station, already running scans of the surrounding space. Admiral Taiho and Ambassador Yuna stood at the center watching the view screen as Ethon Prime fell away behind them. The Docto and its escort ships formed up around them. Commander Sunwoo's face appeared on the communication screen. He was a young man, barely 40, but his eyes held the steady confidence of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Admiral Ambassador, welcome back. Shall I set course for Earth? Not yet, Taiho said. Hold position. I want them to see us. On Ethon Prime, chaos had consumed the assembly hall. Delegates scrambled to their ships. High Speaker Vel demanded that someone do something, but no one knew what to do. The human fleet was too strong. The Council's military forces were scattered across the galaxy. By the time they could assemble a response, the humans would be long gone. Counselor Bryn stood at a viewport, staring at the ships outside. His scales had gone gray with shock. He had planned this for years. It convinced the Council to move against humanity. He had been so certain of victory, he had not expected this. How? He whispered. How did they build those ships without us knowing? Delegate Orm appeared beside him. The Keth representative looked at the human fleet with something like wonder. You underestimated them, Orm said quietly. We all did. We saw how young they were and assumed they were weak. We were wrong. Outside, the human ships began to move. Their engines flared with blue light as they aligned for faster-than-light travel. Then, one by one, they vanished into the darkness between stars. The Galactic Council watched them go. No one spoke. No one moved. They all understood in that moment that something fundamental had changed. Humanity was no longer asking for permission. They were no longer playing by the Council's rules. They had shown their strength, and they had made their message clear. Do not test us again. High Speaker Vel finally broke the silence. His voice was hollow. What have we done? No one answered, because no one knew. 6 months had passed since the humans walked out of the Galactic Assembly. In that time, everything had changed. On Earth, the news of the Council's betrayal spread like fire. People who had never cared about galactic politics suddenly paid attention. They watched the recordings of Admiral Taiho confronting High Speaker Vel. They read the evidence of Counselor Bryn's conspiracy. They saw their diplomats turn their backs on the ancient powers of the galaxy and walk away with their heads. Held high, something awakened in humanity that day. Not anger, though there was plenty of that. Something deeper. Pride. Unity. A shared understanding. They could only rely on themselves. Recruitment for the military doubled within a month. Factories that had been building consumer goods switched to producing ship components and weapons. Scientists who had been working on commercial projects joined the defense programs. Everyone wanted to help. Everyone wanted to contribute. Admiral Taiho oversaw the fortification of every human colony. Defense stations were built around key worlds. The Shadow Fleet that had surprised the Council was expanded with new ships, each one more powerful than the last. The message was clear. Any attack on human territory would be met with overwhelming force. But Taiho knew that military strength alone was not enough. They needed allies. They needed to show the galaxy that humanity was not the enemy, the Council claimed. That job fell to Ambassador Yuna. She began her work the day after they returned to Earth. Her first call was to delegate Orm of the Keth Collective. The Keth had always been friendly to humans. They had sponsored humanity's entry into the Council 40 years ago, and Orm had watched the walkout with respect in his eyes. The Council has lost its way, Orm told her during their first meeting. They rule through fear, not justice. Many of us have felt this for a long time, but no one was brave enough to challenge them. Till now, Yuna said. Orm nodded. Until now, the Keth Collective will stand with humanity. Whatever comes next, you will not face it alone. Word spread quickly. Other species began to reach out. The Ven, a peaceful race of traders, offered economic partnerships. The Drell, who had suffered under Council's sanctions for decades, pledged military support. The Morith, the Selin, the Korra, one by one, they came forward, drawn by humanity's courage. Not everyone was friendly. Some species remained loyal to the Council. Others were too afraid to take sides. But enough of them believed in what humanity represented. A chance for something better. A galaxy built on fairness instead of fear. Dr. Hannah led the scientific efforts. She assembled teams of the brightest minds from Earth and their new allies. Together, they studied captured Council technology and developed improvements that pushed human capabilities forward by decades. New weapons. New shields. New engines that could cross the galaxy in days instead of weeks. But Hannah's most important work was defensive. She designed early warning systems that could detect enemy fleets before they arrived. She created communication networks that could not be jammed or intercepted. She built the foundation of an alliance that could protect itself against any threat. On Ethon Prime, the Galactic Council struggled to respond. High Speaker Vel called emergency sessions every week, demanding action against humanity. But the Council was divided. Some members wanted war. Others feared that war would destroy them. And a growing number, watching their allies slip away to join the humans, questioned whether the Council was worth saving at all. Counselor Bryn remained the loudest voice for aggression. He gave speeches about the human threat. He warned that if they did not act now, humanity would dominate the galaxy within a century. He demanded a united military campaign to crush the rebels, but his words rang hollow. Everyone knew that Bryn had started this crisis with his lies. Everyone knew that he had turned humanity from a partner into an enemy. Some delegates blamed him openly. Others simply refused to listen anymore. The Council's power was crumbling. Species that had obeyed for millennia began to question. If the Council could betray humanity, they could betray anyone. Trust, once broken, is not easily repaired. 6 months after the walkout, Ambassador Yuna sent a message to High Speaker Vel. It was not a request for negotiation. It was not an apology. It was an announcement. The Terran Compact has been formed, she declared. This alliance includes humanity, the Keth Collective, and 7 other sovereign species. We do not recognize the authority of the Galactic Council over our territories or our people. Any hostile action against members of the Compact will be met with unified response. Vel received the message in his private chamber. He sat alone in the darkness, watching the words play across his screen. Outside his window, Ethon Prime floated in the endless black, surrounded by fewer ships than there had been 6 months ago. Ships that had once belonged to the Council's allies. Ships that had left to join the humans. He remembered the moment when Admiral Taiho had stood before the Assembly and accused them of fear. He dismissed it then as human arrogance. Now he understood they had been afraid. Afraid of humanity's growth, their adaptability, their potential, and that fear had driven them to make the worst mistake in the Council's history. The humans had been friends. They could have been partners for 1,000 years. Instead, the Council had turned them into something far more dangerous enemies. On Earth, Admiral Taiho stood on the observation deck of the new orbital command station. Below him, the blue and green planet turned slowly in the light of the sun. Ships moved through the darkness around him, warships and transports and explorers, all bearing the flag of the Terran Compact. Ambassador Yuna joined him at the viewport. She looked tired but satisfied. Building an alliance was hard work, but they had done it. The Council will not accept this quietly, she said. They will try to break us, divide us, destroy us. Let them try, Taiho replied. We are not the same species that joined them 40 years ago. We have learned, we have grown, and we will never bow to them again. Yuna smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and hopeful. So what happens now? Taiho looked out at the stars. billions of them, scattered across the infinite darkness. Each one a sun. Each one surrounded by worlds waiting to be discovered. Now, he said, we build something better. A galaxy where strength does not mean cruelty. Where justice is not a weapon for the powerful. Where every species, young or old, is treated with respect. He turned to face her. They wanted to stop us because they were afraid of what we might become. Let us show them they were right to be afraid. Not because we will conquer them, but because we will prove that everything they believed was wrong. Yuna nodded. She understood the humans had walked out of the Galactic Assembly 6 months ago. The Council had watched in horror, thinking it was the end. They were wrong. It was only the beginning.